Only a handful of people from my personal life know this story, but I figured since Reddit can be pretty anonymous, I'd just make a throwaway and get it off my chest one more time. You can call nonsense on it all if you like. I really don't care what anyone has to say about it at this stage, because the truth is, I still might actually go to prison for this. You see, more than 20 years ago, I used to work the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station in a major US city, one that'll remain nameless and that I do not live in anymore. As you can imagine, I've got my fair share of crazy stories from my time working there, but only one that still keeps me up at night, and that's the story of Big Sal. One of the things that kind of surprised me about working nights at the gas station was the number of regulars I'd get to know. You figure an overnight gas station would mostly get a mixed assortment of transient strangers, but for some people, mostly other night shift workers, stopping at the gas station became a regular part of their routine, especially since it was the only thing in the area that was open 24 hours. There were a couple of nurses and a few cab drivers that I used to see on the regular, but without a doubt, my favorite was Big Sal. Sal didn't get his name because he was tall. He got his name because he was wide, and most nights he'd waddle into the station, pay for his gas, then we'd shoot the breeze for a while. It was kind of annoying at first, being forced to conversate when I felt too tired to even string a sentence together. But after a while, it was kind of nice to see a familiar face to break the boredom and kill some time. But then the thing that really made me like Big Sal was when he brought me a little takeout tray of some food that his wife had made. Occasionally, he'd stay so long that we'd have to pause so I could serve a customer. Sometimes he'd just stand there and mind his business. Other times, he'd make a face at me like, "Get a load of this guy," and I'd have to bite my tongue to keep from laughing out loud. But then this one time, a guy walks in to pay for his gas, so Sal takes a step back from the register and politely apologizes to him. Guy says, "No problem." I ring him up, then just as he's going through his wallet, Sal says, "Hey, don't I know you?" The guy looks up, narrows his eyes a little, then innocently says, I don't think so." Then says something about being up on business from Missouri. Sal just kind of nods for a second, then says, "What's your name?" The guy stops again, gives his nervous little chuckle, then gives some plain-sounding name that I can't for the life of me remember. But I do remember what Sal said next, because that got repeated over and over for the next minute or so. Sal says, "Nah, that's not you. You're..." And then he says a very, very Italian-sounding name and accuses the guy of having worked with a friend of his in another large city nearby. Again, the guy denies it, acting like Sal is out of his freaking mind. Even I thought he was telling the truth, but good God, Sal just went off like a deaf Jack Russell, and there was just no getting him back in the car. Then right when I think things are about to get heated, with the guy being like, "Get out of my face, I told you who I am. Now leave me alone, please, sir," Sal backs down. He says something like, "You know what? I'm sorry. You're right. You just look like an old friend of mine, and I got offended thinking you were trying to duck me. I apologize." "Hey, no problem," the guy replied, obviously still bristling a little. "Just, Jesus, listen to what people are telling you, for Christ's sake. I don't want to fight anybody, you know?" I know. I apologize sincerely. I'm ashamed of myself. I really am," Sal says back. I used to get stuff like that a surprising amount. Not always from Sal, just weird little interactions with members of the public where it could either be hilarious or incredibly annoying. So I really didn't think too much of it. I just waited patiently, took the guy's money, and then wished him a nice night. Sal chimes in too, offering another apology, then we watch the guy walk out of the station. The second the door closes, the guy starts walking towards his car. Sal practically jumps into action. Not exactly Sonic the Hedgehog given his size, but he definitely waddled harder and faster than I'd ever seen before. Right as the guy is getting back into his car, I see Sal reaching into his waistband for something. Then bang, 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 bang. I see muzzle flashes, Then the guy's windshield is shattered. And then there's silence again. I just stand there for a second, frozen to the spot, unable to properly compute what I've just witnessed. Big Sal, nice guy Sal who brings me leftovers and shoots the breeze with me when we're not roasting customers. He just killed a man, and he did it right in front of me. Sal didn't even look back. He just slid the gun back into his waistband and started walking over to the guy's car. When he got there, he opened up the driver's side door, shoved over the guy's body, then got in and drove the car out of the lot. The whole thing was said and done in a matter of seconds. I'm thinking, I need to call the cops as soon as I come out of shock. And this is back before I had a cell phone, so I ran into the back to use the gas station's phone. But as I'm running, a little thought pops into my head. Big Sal, Italian name, works at night, carries a gun, just shot a guy as coolly as I'd take out the trash. Holy mother of God, he's in the mafia. I'm standing there, phone in hand, wanting to call 911, but I couldn't bring myself to. All I could think of was, what if I call and he's gonna know? I couldn't have been a mafia witness, going into witness protection and all that nonsense in my early 20s. Are you kidding me? Look, I know I should have called the cops, but I was terrified. I hesitated. What else do you want me to say? The mob was a serious thing where I grew up, not like it is now. And besides, Big Sal had left his car at the pumps. Like, surely he'd be coming back for it, and soon, considering what he'd just done. And think about it. He shows back up, sees the cop car outside. He's gonna disappear and have me killed to keep me quiet. He knew so much about me too. Like, we'd been talking all summer basically. He'd have been able to have dudes find me in like days if he wanted to. So, I'm standing there at the register, trying not to have a full-blown panic attack when Sal finally shows back up in a taxi. He has a change of clothes. His hair's still damp, and when he walked into the station, I almost choked on the amount of cologne he was wearing. Then he just walks up to the register, addresses me by name, and says, "This is a robbery." I just look at him, like, what? And he says it again. I said, "This is a robbery." Then he pulls out a gun from his waistband and points it at me. Immediately, I'm like, holy Jesus, Sal, you don't gotta kill me, man. I swear I won't say anything. Hey, calm down. I'm not gonna clip you, he replies. Just listen to me for Christ's sake, okay? Open the register and give me the money. I did as I was told, but I can't even really describe how confused I was. First he shoots somebody, and then he comes back to rob me. Why? Now, because I just robbed you, I'm gonna need the tapes too. You catch my drift? He says. And suddenly I get it. He's trying to cover his tracks. I was visibly relieved, trembling as I led him into the back. See, kid, now you're getting it. And this is your money too. I'm gonna come back and give you your cut when this all blows over. I didn't say anything in response. I mean, what do you say to something like that? As I said, I'm calmed down a little bit, but I'm still screwed up for having just witnessed a shooting. Sal can obviously detect this, and I don't know how much of what he told me next is true, but this is what he said. He tells me everything's going to be fine and I shouldn't worry about covering for the guy he shot. According to Sal, this dude was a rat, turned state's evidence against his old capo back in the early 80s. Obviously, that meant the mob wanted him dead. But there was a twist, too. They wanted him dead way before he went all Benedict Arnold on them, because one of his associates ended up catching him at home with a 13-year-old girl. This made its way up to the boss of the family, and boom, the guy gets greenlit. He finds out, so to save his life, he turns into the star witness in a RICO case. After that, poof, he disappears. What was he doing back home? I don't know. Presumably he'd lost some weight or dyed his hair, maybe lost a little of his accent after living away for so long, but that didn't fool Sal, and it cost the guy his life. I didn't stick around to take my cut. I called up my boss to quit the very next day. I also kept my mouth shut when the cops came around to talk about the robbery. Well, I talked, but I gave Sal's version of the events. Guy in a mask came in, took the money, took the tapes, left. That seemed good enough for them, so after a while, the whole thing just went away. And I'm hoping it stays away too, because as much as I feel a weird, longing sense of guilt over the whole thing, I just want what's dead to stay buried. I used to work part-time at this crummy old gas station in the middle of nowhere. I'd start my shifts at 7 a.m., taking over from the lady who used to work the night shift. We'd do a little shift changeover, have a coffee, then she'd head off to take her kids to school. But one day I arrive at the gas station to find a guy waiting at the counter, and as soon as he sees me, he's like, "Well, it's about time." I'm like, "Excuse me? I just got here and I'm on time." He just comes back with, "I've been waiting here like 10 minutes to pay for my gas, lady." I figured Dora, the night shift lady, must be in the back using the bathroom or something, and when I explained that to the guy, he's still irritated, but he calms down enough that I can get him his change so he can leave. Once that's over, I head into the back calling out for Dora, but I get no reply. I search the entire back area of the gas station, but there's not a soul to be found. Dora's car is round back, which is why I figured she was there. But then aside from the guy waiting at the register, the place was deserted. I walk back behind the register, confused, then I pluck up the courage to call our boss at home. I knew he'd be angry that I called so early, but to be honest, I just knew something weird was going on. Like, have you heard that story about that old ship they found just totally abandoned? Or the old English colony where the people disappeared after scratching the word Croatoan into the settlement walls? I swear it straight up reminded me of that. So, once I was sure there was nothing I should know regarding Dora, I called the cops. 2 cops arrived to search her car and ask me a few questions, and by around 10 a.m., our boss showed up to give the cops access to the CCTV footage. They were all in the back office while I was working, so I didn't get to see any of it myself. But when the cops left and my boss walked up to the register, he looked shook. I asked him where Dora went because obviously the security cameras would have at least caught which direction she headed off in, or if she was kidnapped or anything scary like that. And I remember the look of scared confusion on his face when he said, "I don't know." I asked him what he meant by that because, like I said, the CCTV had to have captured where she went. But that was just the problem. My boss said the CCTV captured Dora walking into the back of the store, opening up the back door, then walking out of it. But the camera recording the small parking lot round back only caught the door opening, but no Dora appears. Now that doesn't mean she just disappeared into thin air, it just means she exited the real door, then instead of walking out into the lot, she shimmied along the right side of the wall out of the camera's sight. At least, that was the only logical explanation for it. But it meant that, for some reason, Dora had made a concerted effort not to be caught wandering into the woods at the side of the gas station. But what in the world would she do a thing like that for? Unless, of course, someone was waiting for her just out of sight of the cameras that scared her enough that she'd run off into the forest. All we could do was hope that the police investigation turned up some answers, hopefully finding Dora safe and sound in the process. But he heard nothing back. I mean, my boss literally had to call the local sheriff's department just to be told that, no, they hadn't made any progress and were still waiting on witness testimony. But there were no witnesses. Unless Dora really had been stalked or intimidated off camera, there wasn't a single other soul on site at the time she wandered off. It's been years now, and there's still been no sign of Dora anywhere. In fact, I think in a few years she'd be eligible to be declared dead in absence or whatever fancy legal term there is for it. I don't know if they're quite ready to give up hope yet because I know I'm not. I just hope that Dora is somewhere safe and happy, having just gotten sick of her dumb night job and decided she wanted something better for herself. That's what I try to think about anyway, because the alternative, well, I just don't want to think about that at all. Back when I was working part-time at a local gas station, this shy little lady came in through the front door and said she was having a problem out at the pumps. When I asked what the problem was, I listened as she explained that she'd clicked the lever that let the nozzle keep pumping gas, but then had somehow managed to pull the thing out of her car's gas tank. Not knowing what to do, she walked to the store and asked me what to do. I'm like, "But you stopped the flow, right?" She looks at me with this sheepish look before I'm just like, oh God. I run out of the store, praying she'd only managed to spill a little gas. But no, there's not just some little puddle to clean up. The gas nozzle is lying there just pumping out gallon after gallon of highly flammable liquid onto the pad. And keeping in mind that this is just after midday in the middle of Arizona summertime, it was easily 100 degrees out, and cars are just whizzing out along the highway next to us. All it would have taken was the slightest little spark, and woof, the whole place would have gone up in a big fireball. I shut down the pumps using the manual override behind the register. I told everyone at the pumps to walk, not drive, walk away from the gas station into the little thing on the side of the highway, and for any smokers to please refrain from their de-stressor of choice until the fire department arrived. I remember one total Karen being like, "You can't talk to me that way, young man," as I'm literally screaming at her to evacuate the area. Even when I explained the situation, she was like, "Manners don't cost a cent." Like she could be burning to death and be like, "At least he said please, and thank you, and ma'am." A little while later, the situation was contained and most of the danger averted, but even the firefighters who attended said they'd never seen anything that bad, and the whole gas station had to be closed for more than 24 hours while we cleaned up and had all the pumps checked by a certified engineer. The engineer also said he'd never seen anything like it before. Either there was a structural problem with the nozzle itself, which is rare, or the person who broke it had Hulk strength. He looked puzzled when I told him it was some 5'0" little lady, but eventually just shrugged it off and got on with his job. Definitely the closest thing I'd ever been to death, and I'm happy to say that nothing remotely close to that amount of danger ever happened again. A few years back, my wife and I were driving through the Midwest on a trip to visit her parents in Rapid City, South Dakota. It might sound crazy to some, but we find ourselves enjoying the journey a lot more if we take much more scenic routes around the country. And with the vast plains of South Dakota being particularly breathtaking in the spring, we decided to take more of the minor highways across the state. But on this occasion, we were having such a blast that I completely neglected to check my gas gauge for the better part of an afternoon. As a result, I suddenly see my gas light flick on, and both me and my wife have a minor panic attack, thinking we might be late to our parents after having been stuck in the middle of nowhere with an empty tank. They already thought that I was a dud, so I was in no rush to prove them right. I must have driven for 5 or 6 miles on nothing but fumes, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you how relieved we both were when we saw what looked like a small town coming into view. I can't tell you what it was called, we didn't see any kind of signage for it, and when I later checked my road map, there was nothing marked on the stretch of highway where it should have been. But at the time, me and my wife didn't give a hoot what the town's name was. All we were interested in is if they had a gas station or not, and sure enough, they did. We pulled into this tiny little place called Pop's Trail Services, and only when I got out of the car did I realize how run down the place was. I think we were both so relieved that we just didn't take any notice at first, but as we got out and began to look around, I noticed that this place wasn't like any town I'd visited before. It's hard to describe, honestly, but to keep a long story short, let's just say this old place looked like it was dying. Cars rusting in driveways, lawns overgrown, broken windows on houses that people were still living in. I think I'd felt sorry for them if they weren't so, well, unwelcoming. Pop's Trail Services had only a single pump to it, one with a scruffy-looking handwritten sign that just said, "Cash only." Since no one had appeared to assist me, I figured it was self-service, but when I tried to get the pump to work, I couldn't get a drop of gas out of it. I then walk up to the little shack where I assumed the attendant was, only to find it was empty. Not only that, but it looked like it hadn't been used in years. Everything had this thick film of dust on it, yet the old-fashioned pump showed that there was actually gas in it. As you can imagine, I have this moment where I think, okay, hang on, just what kind of country setup is this? So I turn around to my wife to give her a look and notice that almost everyone in the area has walked out of their house, trailer, or shack to come stare at us. My wife has already seen this, so she gives me this look that says, "I don't like this one bit, Sonny." And let me tell you, neither did I. There are about 5 or 6 single-story houses in our line of sight, and every one of their front doors is wide open, with the homeowner watching us from their front porch. No one was smiling, no one was waving, no one looked particularly hostile either. They were just staring. "They're staring at us, Sonny," I remember my wife saying under her breath. I told her I was well aware that they were staring at us. Then I raised a hand to wave at one of them. It was an older guy in denim overalls and a grubby old trucker hat with more jowls than face. He didn't wave back. He just carried on staring at us in silence. Hey there," I called out. "We're just looking to get some gas and we'll be on our way." The guy just carried on staring at me for a second, then walked back inside his house without saying a single word. We were left to watch even more people gathering to stare at us, women and children creeping out of their houses like rabbits from a burrow, all to watch us curiously from a distance. It was very, very intimidating. I know it might not sound that way, but please take my word for it. There was a distinct tension in the air, and it was not pleasant. A minute later, the jowly guy reemerged from his home and shouted, "Jeb's on his way." "Jeb?" my wife asked rhetorically under her breath. "Who's Jeb?" I told her I didn't know, but we were more than likely about to find out. And so we did. Jeb rolled up in his truck, got out, and walked over to us, eyeing us suspiciously. Once we confirmed it was him, we repeated our story about being out of gas and asked him if he could get the pump working for us. Obviously, I told him he'd be properly compensated and we wouldn't take up any more of his time than we had to. In my heart of hearts, I hope he might soften up a little. I appreciate that people all over can be wary of strangers, especially in smaller, more rural communities, but he didn't. The offer of money didn't seem to sway him either, and his response to our story was, "What brings you two folks out here to our little town?" I tell him we're on the way to see my wife's parents in Rapid City, and immediately, he gives me this look. I knew exactly why, too. If I wanted to get to Rapid City, I'd have to be the worst navigator in history to be all the way out where we were. And when I told him that, "We like to take the scenic route, you know?" he responded by spitting on the ground in front of him. It was so sudden that my wife gasped a little, and when he looked up at us again, I could tell he didn't believe us, and seemed to be pretty livid as well. "Yeah, I see what's happening here," Jeb said. "You two city folk think we're just about dumb as rocks, don't you?" I was shocked. I practically jumped to try to explain that wasn't the case, but he told me to shut up. "We don't like folks like you out here, mister," Jeb continued. "And I suggest you get out of here before we decide you're not welcome anymore." Again, I tried to explain we're not federals, but he just shushes me and points over towards the gathering crowd. "I wouldn't want you to make those people angry," he said. They're sick and tired of being harassed by vermin like you. To this day, I have no idea what he was talking about. Like I said, I couldn't even find the place on any map, nor did I catch the name, so there was no way of me finding out what happened to make them detest outsiders so much. But from the way that he was talking to me, whatever it was, it must have been bad. I remember my wife edging back towards the passenger seat of my car, but I'm not even sure the thing will start again. And if it doesn't, if we get in and we can't get that thing started up again, we'd be in a handy little prison and the town folks would be able to pour their wrath onto us at their leisure. But what else were we going to do? Run? Fight? I was done reasoning with the guy, or rather, he was done reasoning with me. I just didn't see any other choice. We got in the car, and I began trying to start the engine. At first, we had no such luck, as I kept twisting my key in the ignition, and the crowd outside began to wander closer and closer. The guy kept shouting things at me as I tried over and over to bring the engine to life, and for a minute, it seemed like we were screwed. But then, vroom, the single sweetest sound I'd ever heard in years preceded us, barreling down the dirt road and back towards the main highway. How in the world we even had enough vapor in the tank to get us going, I don't know, and I actually believe there had been a little divine intervention at play, to be honest with you. That being said, we still only had enough to trundle to a shop just shy of the main highway, but by that point, we were at least a mile and a half down the road and well out of sight of the gathered townsfolk. As soon as we stopped, my wife burst into tears, and honestly, it was a struggle not to join her. I hadn't felt that vulnerable and scared since I was a child. The whole incident took us completely by surprise, and it was an experience that left us considerably shaken for some time afterward. To this day, I still sometimes remember that little rusty town with no name, the one we almost got mobbed in for some inexplicable reason. I still don't know what happened to make them so mad either. In my darker moments, I have ideas that there was some kind of extremist religious cult, or kind of like those people in Waco or something, but then, the way he said, "you folks," so bitterly, it's more likely that there was some kind of land dispute or something of that nature, something that turned them against whatever government body or private entity draws their ire. I feel bad for them if something like that happened, I really do, but the way they treated us is no way to treat strangers, because I didn't just feel unwelcome, I felt unsafe. And for a moment back there, I didn't think we were ever going to make it out, at all. One of the most darkly humorous stories I know is the time my mate almost got his head caved in by an armed robber. He doesn't have Reddit, and when I suggested the get one to post this, he called me a neckbeard, so I'm posting it for him to be a karma farmer. It's one of those stories that definitely wouldn't have been anything to laugh about at the time, but as the years have gone by, I find myself laughing at what happened at the very end of it. Maybe it's the pure relief of knowing he got through it without a scratch, something to take the edge off of what was actually a very traumatic event. But enough for me, I'll let you all be the judge of it. So this is back when we were all about 18, 19. Some of us had gone off to uni, whereas others had gotten full-time jobs. One of the lads with the full-time job was Pac-Man, who got his name by having such a big mouth that he looked like Pac-Man whenever he laughed. So, Pac-Man gets a job in a petrol station, and it's his first actual full-time job. I think he'd only been there about a week when the armed robber turned up, and I remember him saying most of his job was easy. He was just having a hard time figuring out the till. "There's like 100 bloody buttons," he said, "on it, and none of them say actual words. It's proper stress." I think he was getting there in the end. Like he could work the thing, but if someone came in asking to change notes to pound coins for the air pump or whatever, he was screwed. Anyway, his first week or so is that bad that management decided to put him on night shift so he can get to know the till at a much slower pace. I say nights, it was 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., and after that the garage shut for 4 hours before reopening at 6. So I think it's his second week at this point, but it's about 10 to 2 in the morning and he's getting ready to close up. He said he was doing stock when all he heard was glass shattering from someone smashing a hole in the door with a baseball bat. The next thing he knows, there's 3 lads in balaclavas cornering him before they grip him and drag him behind the counter. They're screaming at him to open the till, smashing stuff with bats when he hesitated. Basically, he's in an absolute nightmare situation, but he's faced with something of a problem. He doesn't know how to just open the till. I don't know if this was deliberate on the manager's part. Don't tell him how to get to the cash until he's trusted kind of thing. Or maybe he had told him and Pac-Man just forgot. Either way, Pac-Man has to look these angry robbers in the eye and say, "I can't." They just think he's trying to be a hero, so the fella closest to him just smacks him one and then starts repeating himself. "Open the till. Open it or we'll smash your head in." Pac-Man says he was about to try and fight them, but he's not some fanny either, so the punch made him angry enough to shout back, "Can you not bloody hear me? I can't open the till." They're going, "What are you on about? Just open it. We won't tell you again." To which he replies, "I'm new. I can't open the till unless you buy something." He said one of them proper wanted to do him in at that point, but then another stopped the bloke, turned back to him and said, "I'll have a pack of blue Wrigley's then." Then one of the others stops and thinks and says, "20 Lambert." So my mate gets him his ciggies and his chewies, then uses them to open the till. The lads take all the cash, force him to empty the ciggies, but fall short of asking him about a safe, as I think they'd got the message by that point. After that, they just left and my mate called the police. Don't get me wrong, I don't envy what he had to go through. It must have been grim as anything. But I wish I could have been there to see 3 furious armed robbers calm down suddenly, only to ask, "Could I have a pack of chewing gum, please?" I suppose that's just the thing about situations like that. Just how unpredictable and volatile they can be. And I understand how lucky or privileged we all are that we can look back and laugh when, on another day, Pac Dude might not be around anymore to laugh about it with us. My first real job was working at a gas station when I was just 17 years old. The station itself was this run-down old building just outside of Mount Vernon, Illinois, well off the beaten path. The owners barely cleaned the place and were too cheap to maintain anything other than the gas pumps. The ceiling leaked, the entire rear room was a mess, and the employee's bathroom barely worked. It was like it was screaming out to me, "Hey kid, don't work here, it sucks." But what can I say? I needed the money. What's worse, the other 2 members of staff were some of the creepiest people I'd ever met. I strongly suspected one of them was a meth head, but I never get proof on that. But I literally know the other dude had been to prison for manslaughter. I mean, I never asked him about it. I'm not that stupid. But between you and me, if his personality was anything to go by, he must have had a pretty good lawyer to have gotten off with just a manslaughter conviction. But surprisingly, the scariest thing I ever experienced while working there wasn't anything to do with either of them. It actually involved my worst and most irrational fear. So my least favorite part of the job was taking out the trash at the end of a graveyard shift. Every single time I did it, I used to get the creeps thinking something was going to burst out of the dumpster and grab me, then drag me down to the garbage realm or something. That, or how someone might be waiting for me, crouched among the trash bags, and I'd never see them until it was too late. Like I said, just one of those dumb, irrational fears you get when doing something all alone and late at night. But then this one night, I walk out the rear exit, full trash bag in hand, when I hear, "Hey you." I freeze, turning to see nothing in the parking lot but a few sleeper trucks. It didn't help that it was almost pitch black out there, and I realized I can't see who's apparently talking to me. I start to get really nervous. I'm too anxious to say anything, and I simply start heading back inside when I hear it again. Hey you." Someone was definitely calling out to me while also trying to remain as quiet as possible. It was the trying to stay quiet part that really gave me the willies. No one whose intentions are innocent talks like that. Not usually, anyway. My gut is just telling me, this is bad. This is really bad. And I'm smart enough to listen to it. The last thing I heard before I got back to safety was like, Hey, wait a minute, come here. Then I just shut the door, bolted, then started to close up for the evening. Instead of driving back, I called my dad and told him some sketchy guy was hanging around the parking lot and that I was scared. So, being the great father he was, he drove down to make sure I was safe and to give me a ride home, leaving my car in the parking lot until the next day. The following morning, I get a call from the manager telling me I don't have to go into work that afternoon. When I ask why, she tells me that about 15 minutes after my dad showed up to give me a ride home, a bunch of guys smashed their way into the gas station and basically ransacked the place. When I told him about the guy whispering to me in the parking lot, he just about freaked out, thanking God that I was okay and that they'd timed their raid around closing. Obviously, I was relieved too, like they totally smashed the place up, so if I'd been there, there's no telling what they would have done to me. But that wasn't what had my manager freaking out so much. It was the fact that the cops had told him how lucky I was, because this same gang had committed a bunch of other robberies in the area, and this was the only one in which they hadn't taken a hostage of some kind. One liquor store owner was beaten half to death after he refused to tell them where his safe was. Turned out he didn't have one. He just took all his cash home with him every night. Trouble was, they didn't buy that story and he ended up in the hospital for like a month. That could have been me. Really, it could have. And given that I was a 17-year-old girl at the time it happened, Jesus, I can't even imagine how rough I'd have had it. After that, my dad refused to let me work the graveyard shift, and I can't say I was too sore about that at all. I used to work 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. at an Arco station as a cashier back in the day. It was on some old country road off of a main highway, so we didn't get too many customers. But locals knew it was cheap and open late, so the business just about broke even every month. Since we were in Oregon, where people don't pump their own gas for whatever reason, I used to work with a fuel attendant most shifts. But on one shift in particular, he calls in sick and the bosses couldn't get me a replacement. So, I'm screwed, doomed to work 2 jobs for 1 paycheck for 8 solid hours. Then around like 1:30 a.m., I start hearing these creepy scratching sounds coming from the storage room out back. We used to get raccoons out there all the time, scratching away at a piece of exposed drywall in the hopes of getting through to all the snacks inside. The past few times that it happened, I just stuck my head to shout out, "Hey, trash panda, enough!" And the sounds would normally stop. As usual, they did, so I just went back to browsing Reddit and trying not to fall asleep. But then, the sounds start back up again, which had never, ever happened before, so I'm like, brave raccoons tonight, huh? So I do it again. I call out and the sounds stop. But again, they start up again within minutes of me sitting down, but this time, when I get up to call out, I hear some loud bashing sound coming from the storage room, and I realize that it's no raccoon making those noises. In retrospect, I probably should have just slammed the door, locked it, and called the cops, but I'm dumb, so I looked. And what do I see lunging at me from a dark corner? But the scrabbiest, most demonic-looking meth head I'd ever seen in my life. I just turn tail and run out of the store as he unleashes this hell scream behind me, and not once do I look back as I bolted towards the front entrance to the station. I don't think I'll ever find the words to describe how relieved I was to see red and blue flashing lights outside. A cop was literally pulling up after getting a call from a passing driver that someone was acting all weird around back. Must have been after watching Marky Meth Freak scratching away at the drywall. Just crazy thinking that he and the raccoons had the same style of thinking. But anyway, thankfully the dude ran off when he saw the cop entering the station, and I'm not sure what happened to the guy after that. Management had the hole patched up, and after that we didn't get any more scratching, or any more meth heads breaking in the middle of the night. The scariest thing I ever saw while working at a gas station has to be the time I had this huge Goldberg-looking dude rock up to the register, slam down a 50, and shout gas. He immediately walks back out towards pump number 4, and I'm just like, whatever, idiot. Ring him up for $50 worth and activate the pump for him. That's when I noticed how his car isn't parked at the pump properly, so I decided to watch thinking, this is going to be funny. I thought I was going to watch him struggle with the hose, get all angry about it, a healthy dose of karma to lighten up my shift. But that dude hadn't parked like an idiot by accident. He knew exactly what he was doing. He grabs the gas nozzle, opens up the passenger door of his car, then starts spraying gas all over the inside of his car. Obviously, I'm immediately like, no, this is not good, and I smash the emergency shutoff switch before calling the cops. Then, while I'm on the phone to the dispatcher, terrified this dude is about to set his car on fire in a freaking gas station, I see something even worse. The driver's side door opens up and some girl comes tumbling out of the car, soaked in gas, and goes running towards the highway screaming in terror. By that time, everyone around was watching this whole thing unfold as the dude chases the gas-soaked girl out of sight. This is back when I had to use the gas station's landline, as we weren't allowed to keep cell phones with us while on shift, so it's not like I could run out to see what's going on. I had to wait until the call was over to run out and see what everyone could see. Thankfully, the girl wasn't on fire, since the guy didn't have a lighter handy, or if he did, he certainly saw sense with regards to using it. But my God, he was kicking the crap out of her, and when the cops showed up, they had to tase the guy to get him to stop. I legitimately thought that I was about to watch a human fireball for a hot minute. This probably won't be the scariest story y'all have ever heard, and at the time it just made me mad. But afterward, when I actually had time to think about it, I realized I basically dodged a bullet, and that if I hadn't been a little quicker, I might not be around today to write this. A few years back, I'm driving home from work one day when I see my gas light on. Naturally, I pull into the next available gas station, fill my tank up, then head into the gas station itself to pay. Then, as I'm walking through the door, I accidentally bump into a guy who was walking out while staring at his phone. Even though he was most definitely at fault, I offered him an apology. But that didn't seem to be good enough for him. He gives me this look, and when I return his gaze, he says something like, "You looking like you know me, homie." I didn't even really know what he meant by that, and I found his overall reaction to be nothing short of infuriating. But my mother brought me up to be the bigger man, so I simply told him to be more careful next time, and carried on to the store to pay for my gas. He made some comment like, "The F do you say to me, old man?" But I disregarded it. He didn't follow me into the store, so I didn't think that there'd be any more trouble. I walked to the back of the store, intent on grabbing a pack of those Korean moon pie things, then remember what my wife said about getting started with my diet. I knew she was right, and it was either start now or never get started at all, so I decided to forego my imported moon pies and just pay for my gas. Then as I'm walking back towards the pumps, it sort of looks like my front hood is up for some reason. Then as I get closer, I realize it really is my car that has its front hood up. Only I can't see who's behind it, presumably checking my engine. Under normal circumstances, that wouldn't alarm me too much, but considering the interaction I just had with that very rude young man, I get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I started calling out before the very same young man darts out from behind my hood and starts walking away as quickly as he can after closing it. I don't move too fast these days, but by God did I hustle over to my car to see what kind of vandalism he'd been up to, only to see that he'd cut my brake fluid. My brake fluid of all things. He could have damaged 50 different things, and he went right for my brake fluid. And if I hadn't just paid for my gas and gotten out of there, I might not have caught him doing it. Obviously, I called the cops, then a mechanic as quickly as I could. And honestly, I could barely believe what I told them, how a young man had taken such offense at the smallest slight that he tried to, well, murder me. Because let's face it, that's what he tried to do. I'd have gotten back on the highway, picked up speed, then when it came to brake, that'd be the end of me. It took a tow truck to get my car out of there, and the repairs cost me more than I expected. But on the bright side, the cops caught the kid who did it, and he ended up picking up a charge for property damage of all things. I honestly wish he got more. I've been a cop for about 10 years now, and this is one of those calls that still haunts me. I get a call for a domestic assault that had just occurred, and I learn that the victim is at a gas station about a block away from her home. I get there and find the female victim's throat had been cut from ear to ear. The neighbor is holding a towel up to her slit throat, and the victim is struggling to breathe. The paramedics are on their way, and I take over holding the towel for the neighbor. I'm trying to apply enough pressure to reduce the bleeding, but not so much pressure that I'm strangling her. It's a delicate balance. Quick law lesson. You know that there are laws against hearsay, right? Basically, I can't testify in court about the events that someone else told me about and I didn't witness. The person who witnessed it would have to testify to it. One of the expectations is what's known as the dying declaration. If someone is on their deathbed and believes they're about to die, their statements are exempt from the hearsay rules. I have some serious doubts that this woman is going to live. I want to ask her who slit her throat in order for it to qualify as a dying declaration. I need to be able to testify that she believed she was about to die, so I asked her 2 questions. The first was, "Who cut your throat?" which she answered. The second was, "You realize that you may be about to die?" which she answered, "Yes." Our eyes were locked, and I still remember the emptiness in her eyes. Within a few minutes, the paramedics showed up, and my partner and I went next door to look for suspects. The door was ajar, and we could hear a baby screaming upstairs. We went in with guns drawn, and a metallic smell of blood was overpowering. We made our way upstairs, past smeared bloody handprints on the walls, and found the child upstairs. He was unharmed, and the suspect was long gone. Thanks to the excellent performance of the medical staff, the victim survived. I met with her a couple of weeks later, and I was very apprehensive to speak with her again. I basically looked at her and told her she was going to die. When she opened the door, I could tell that she didn't recognize me. She had very little memory of what happened after she was assaulted. I told her who I was, and she hugged me, crying, and thanked me for saving her life. The suspect ended up pleading guilty, so I never had to testify as to what I told the victim that night. But still, it haunts me to this day. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit r/letsreadofficial, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all of these stories in big compilations and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the description. Thanks so much, friends. And welcome to Spooky Month.